At the point of this video, I'm 35 years old, and if you're in your 30s or 40s, I'm gonna share 30 principles that'll help you change your life today. Because right now, you can either choose to build your dreams or live a life of regret. Number one, the most dangerous thing in your 30s isn't failure, it's comfort. I see people that turn 30 or 40, have made a good amount of money, and are just chilling and relaxing. And all that comfort leaves them depressed, leaves them anxious. They're missing some bigger purpose. I think it's important to, no matter what age you are, to find an exciting big vision that genuinely motivates you, that fires you up. For me, that's going and building FounderOS into the greatest founder community of the 21st century. It's going and investing in a founder retreat center in the Dolomites. It's going and building these, movies essentially on YouTube and laddering this up to a Netflix series one day. And, that's just hardly scratching the surface. If you're gonna go and motivate yourself to jump out of bed every single morning, which is what you deserve, you need to have a big, exciting vision. And one other example of this is really a focus on mastery. We can always find new skills, new things we're looking to learn. Right now I'm trying to become better at writing and have a book on the way. Trying to master things like cinematography and video creation, becoming more and more comfortable on camera. A big thing with that is the mastery of it. I'm not doing it for some outcome. I'm not doing it to achieve anything. I'm doing it just to fall in love with the process itself. And so you need to find that thing that pushes you. Number two, your late start is actually your advantage. Everyone thinks starting late is a disadvantage. The truth is, experience and maturity give you an edge that no 25-year-old can touch. Ray Kroc started McDonald's at 52. Sam Walton started Walmart at 44. It's never too late to start something. At the end of the day, starting a business as an example is pattern recognition. And the older you get, the more things you've seen, the more you're able to connect dots that someone much younger than you probably can't. I know at the age of 31, I started FounderOS using all of the experience that I had gone and built through my first two companies, Herb and BitMaker. FounderOS would not even have been possible to start had I not learned the hard lessons in the first decade of being a founder. The systems, the blueprints, the playbooks, everything that I share inside of the community we've built is only possible because of all these challenges I went through in the first decade of my career. Number three, success kills more dreams than failure. Most people are terrified of failing, but the truth is, failure isn't what stops people, success does. Success in life should be a checkpoint, not some destination. What I've learned over the years is I used to be so outcome focused. When I exit my company, then I'll be happy. When I go and make this hire, everything will be much more peaceful. When I go and hit 500K per month, at that point, finally, I'll be able to just chill. The reality is that, these big milestones come and you end up realizing the next day that you're no more happy because of it. When you go and you win on something, the best thing you can do is go and use that to go and jazz yourself up and accomplish something even bigger. Use it as fuel to, give even more of yourself to your mission. Create an even bigger vision for yourself and for your team. What I've learned over the years building teams of 50 plus, multiple profitable companies, is that the bigger the vision, the more people you're able to inspire. And too often I see founders with little visions and they're wondering why people on their team are not motivated. The reality is that you have to create a company that has a big umbrella that other people can fit under. You have to be able to motivate a team that the big vision that you have can encapsulate the vision that they have for their individual lives as well. And so go after that thing, run past the finish line, and use each win you get to go and propel you to further wins. Number four, freedom is overrated. Discipline is the real goal. We all grow up thinking freedom is the prize, but here's the paradox. Freedom without discipline is chaos. Just a few months back, I was in the coast of California in Big Sur, reflecting on, my life and business and thinking about the big vision for FounderOS and what I needed to do every single day to get there. It all came down to one critical function, creating exceptional content. Now, exceptional content isn't going to create itself. YouTube videos, content across X, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, all of this stuff takes real effort, real discipline. It came down to 4 hours of deep work every single day from 7 a.m. till 11 a.m., creating one piece of exceptional content. It's this discipline of waking up, getting my iced Americano, doing some writing, or filming a video like this that all eventually compounds over time. You can have these big visions, right? You can have these big things that you want to accomplish at 30 or at 40, but you also have to go and distill that down to what is the core action that you need to do every single day to ladder up to that. I know for me, writing, filming, they put me in flow. right? And I think flow is that state of enjoyment where we're just falling in love with the task at hand. Number 5, energy beats experience. Wrong. Wisdom beats both. We worship youth for their energy, but energy without wisdom burns out. Wisdom is what compounds. As you go and you gain more experience over your career, you realize that wisdom equals leverage. I think of 4 main areas when I think of leverage: media, capital, systems, and people. So when you go and you're building, you want to be thinking about how can you go and maximize these 4 areas? Because the more leverage, the more freedom. We have media coming out across YouTube, X, LinkedIn, TikTok that requires only 4 hours a month of my time. We have over 30 people on the team across the media area, things, sales, marketing, ops, finance, that all do their part. And I'm able to remove myself from the core operations and focus mostly on strategy, high-level partnerships, and content. Lastly, when I think about the systems at FounderOS, it's really what's given me the freedom to go and travel the world. Currently in London, was in Lisbon, heading to Bali soon, then off snowboarding in Japan. And this is all possible because I have systems in place all throughout our company. Systems to go and create the content, systems to distribute it, drive people to newsletters, to leads, to sales, referrals, and recommendations. It's your systems at the end of the day, when you have these all in place, that allow you to step back from the stuff that candidly you probably don't even want to be doing anymore, and be able to double down on the parts of your business and life that fill up your cup. Number 6, forget balance, think in seasons. The world sells us the myth of daily balance, but life doesn't work in balance. It works in seasons. For me, each season of my life lasts around 90 days. I have a personal board meeting that I do with myself every single month and chart out what the theme is going to be for the next 90 days of my life and the next 30 days of my life. And I do this every single month. I chart out my business goals, my life goals, and at the end of the month, I reflect on what went well, what didn't go well, and what did I learn. For me, not every day looks the same. Not every week looks the same. I think that variety is the spice of life. You don't need to worry that each day, you're just doing a copy cutter of the previous day, or that you're sticking to the same routine every single day for the rest of your life. The truth is, give yourself the permission to work in seasons. Give yourself the permission to, mix things up for 90 days. Keep things fresh. Keep life enjoyable. You don't need to be super rigid. Change up your environment for 90 days. Put on a different routine. Go and learn a new skill, right? It's these, new flavors that kind of keep life enjoyable and keep you kind of intellectually stimulated as you're building. Number 7, you should fear regret more than you fear failure. Failure may sting, but regret will haunt you forever. I had a good friend, Steve, go and ask me when I was, in a transition period about 6 years ago. I was, confused. I wasn't sure what I wanted to start next and what I wanted to give, my time towards. Steve went to me and said, "Matt, what would you do if you knew you would be successful?" I realized that, despite a bunch of opportunities on the table that would likely make me tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, that the thing that fired me up the most was creating an amazing founder community, helping founders with systems, and then helping them remove themselves from operations the same way I had done in my previous 2 companies. I said no to what everyone else was telling me to do. I said no to even what made the most sense, financially. And I decided to just double down on the thing that, was a whole body yes for me. My heart was saying, this is the thing. My mind was fired up, and my soul, couldn't help but think of it day and night. And so, I would encourage you to go and ask yourself, what would you do if you knew you would be successful? Go and do that thing that you've been thinking about for years. Go and finally, take the plunge. Lean into your real passion, the thing that's going to fire you up that you could spend the next decade or 2 of your life really focused on. There's really, 2 words that I think about when I'm just about to start something, which is fuck it, right? You don't need to have a whole plan baked before you go and take the leap and do that thing. Oftentimes, the plan just emerges as you're building. Number 8, your body is a multiplier, not a side project. Most people treat their health as an afterthought. But in your 30s and 40s, your body is the multiplier for everything you do. And so my belief is that founders are athletes. Just like any great athlete, they have a coach, they take rest and recovery serious, they show up every single day in practice. The same goes for founders. You need a coach. You need to take your rest and recovery seriously. You need to go and focus on the daily practice and constantly find some way to get better and better. 7 years ago, I became sober and it absolutely changed my life. When I was, going and doing my blood work, I realized that my testosterone was at 300 because of the levels of substances I was using. It was affecting my sleep and affecting my body in a big way. Finally, when I sobered up, after just 3 months, my testosterone went to 800, which, this is the chemical in humans that makes effort feel good. So now, all that building, all that effort I was putting into my dreams was just that much more multiplied. Number 9, you have resources, they don't. People assume youth has an advantage, but in your 30s and 40s, you have resources that they would only dream of. I know when I was in my 20s, I was looking to start up a business, and part of it would require me to go and acquire a random website out of New Zealand. And truthfully, I was broke, and so what did I have to do? Well, I had to go cobble together millions of dollars from investors like the CEO and COO of Shopify, Joe Montana, the Hall of Fame quarterback. I raised from the founders of BuzzFeed. And, because I was in my 20s, I had to go and put all this effort in just to go in getting those resources. Fast forward to age 31, starting Founder OS, I knew I wanted to build something so much differently. My experience in my 30s had taught me that I didn't need to do it the same way I had done it in my 20s. When I thought of starting my third business, I had clear criteria. I wanted a business that could get to $5 million profit a year. I wanted to go and be able to build something that took 3 months or less to build, that I loved the customer, loved the problem, had distribution product fit, and that every day it felt like play. And so my experience enabled me to build a lot smarter and to be able to build something that was completely bootstrapped. Number 10, health isn't self-care, it's strategy. People think health is a luxury, but in business, it's the ultimate strategy. In any business, one thing that you gotta get right is your energy. When you go and you're looking to build anything, whether it's building a team, creating content, building a media company around yourself, inevitably the core aspect to all of these things is you. It's your health, it's your energy, it's your ability to go and motivate people around you, to wake up every day and actually be able to focus. And you can't focus if you're not taking care of yourself. In my 20s, I took my health for granted. I used different substances. I oftentimes, neglected working out, neglected simple things like meditation. And oftentimes I was just hard to be around, because I wasn't taking care of myself and wasn't really loving myself. It was hard for me to be a great leader for others. What I've learned is that your leadership is the cap on your success. If you're a 5 out of 10 leader, you're probably only going to be 3 out of 10 successful. But if you're a 10 out of 10 leader, you have the opportunity to be wildly successful. Inevitably, your health truly does pay off. Number 11, sleep is the new equity. People brag about losing sleep at work, but in your 30s and 40s, sleep is one of the highest return investments you can make. At 23, I remember always being the person that was burning the midnight oil, staying up oftentimes till 9 or 10 p.m. working, saw it as almost a badge of honor not getting much sleep. This is probably one of the stupidest things I could have done, because you're working a lot, but you're super ineffective. And with that little amount of sleep, you're basically drunk every day. As I fast forward to now being 35 years old, I prioritize sleep as one of the most important aspects of my day. And so this involves things like at 7 p.m., using the 7 p.m. trigger as a time to put on red light glasses and initiate the nighttime routine. This routine is everything, right? Because a great night's sleep makes me insanely productive in the morning and makes sure that I'm able to get that 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. deep work routine and really push the needle forward in my businesses. Great sleep turns average effort into peak output. Number 12, your content has depth. 20-somethings post quotes, 30-plus founders post scars, and your scars will be quotes any day. When I was building Herb, my second business, there was one day I had realized that we were way over our skis. We had invested far too much in people. The head count had gone from about 8 core people to around 32. And I realized one day that I'd have to go and remove 23 people on our team in one day. This experience at the time was super traumatizing. And looking back, it's one of the lowest points in my career. But, I've shared this story with founders, pointing out the importance of, number 1, having systems in their business so they don't need to have so many people. And number 2, the importance of sometimes just making the hard decision. Sometimes things that we need to do are incredibly uncomfortable. Over my career, I found the more vulnerable I am, the more I just share those things that sometimes feel super uncomfortable to let people know about. The more I build connection, the more people can feel the general authenticity in my content, and the more I've been able to build a movement of founders around me. So when you go and think about your own content and the scars that you have, think about the playbooks that you wish you had 5 years ago, the systems, the blueprints, the deep dives, the how-tos. Think about what you would have wanted 5 years ago, and then go and use that for the basis of the content that you create now. It's those scars, those moments that you've had to go and really struggle through something, those crucibles of leadership that will help go and benefit the next generation of builders. Number 13, the trifecta of success is assets, leverage, and attention. When it comes to assets, it's those things that you can build once and sell forever. When it comes to leverage, it comes down to the media around you, the people, the capital, and the systems that you build in your business. And then attention by building your own personal media company around you. When it comes to those three aspects of building an online business, I find that the biggest piece that people forget is attention. We live in a totally new day and age, right? Where attention is where the real wealth is built. Being able to build your own organic audience and not have to rely on paid ads. Being able to go and have a brand that's not just with you for the next decade of your life, but for the next 50 years. Your personal brand is the most valuable, appreciating asset you can build. If you're watching this, it's that attention piece that I'd recommend that you double down on. Your 30s and 40s are an amazing opportunity for you to create content, build an audience around you, and control your own media. Number 14, money buys speed, not happiness. We think money will make us happy, but it doesn't. In reality, it just buys us speed. As I've gone and built my own profitable empire of online businesses, I always think to myself, what's my 10-year vision? And then how do I actually accelerate that to get it done over the next 6 months? Now, when I then think about money, money's not something that, is going and just helping me solve all my problems in life, but it certainly helps me go and attack things a lot faster. If I find there's a certain challenge in my business, I'm able to go deploy capital to go maybe hire the right person there, or go and build the right system in place or the right automation to go and remove it. The reality is that you can use money in a way that's a tool to eliminate a lot of the problems that come up in business, making it a lot more smooth and helping you go and accomplish the big vision that you have for your life, as well as for the things you're building. Number 15, stop building businesses, start building ecosystems. One business is fragile, but when you build an ecosystem, one business feeds everything else. When I got into my 30s, I started viewing myself more as an asset manager than an entrepreneur. There was one moment that changed everything for me as an entrepreneur. Learning about Carl Icahn, I saw this guy that actually viewed himself as a portfolio manager, not just a founder. And I started to reflect on my own businesses and realized that I'd always put my businesses first and I was kind of behind the scenes. But, after learning from Carl Icahn, I started to put myself at the top of the chain and then be this asset manager that managed a portfolio of different online businesses. What this caused me to do is start building myself too in my own presence, because no matter what, if I exit different businesses, the thing that will always remain true is that I will always have my personal brand and it can always feed these businesses different leads and awareness. So when I go and I think about my portfolio these days, I think of it as an ecosystem. My personal brand feeds my business brands feed the different cash flows to the businesses, which allow me to go and focus on more people, more exceptional content, which just drives more leads to the business, more cash flows, and creates this founder flywheel. And so as you're going and creating, your own businesses, trying to create different flywheels within them is the key. How is your organic content feeding you leads, feeding you cash flows, and the ability to go and hire more amazing people to build an amazing product and then, perpetuating itself. And the goal is that you have a portfolio of different businesses so that you're more anti-fragile long-term. No matter what happens, one business may go up or down, but because you're diversified, having a portfolio of businesses, you're essentially rock solid for the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades of your life. Number 16, your business should not be your identity. The biggest trap entrepreneurs fall into, becoming their business. In my first business, BitMaker, I was entirely tied to the business. My identity was the business. If the business was doing well, I was high as a kite. If the business was failing, I felt like a complete failure. I'd essentially blocked myself off to the world, and everything I did was focused on this one business. I was essentially a martyr. At the peaks and the valleys, the business was everything to me. While that could seem like a strength, it actually was probably one of the biggest weaknesses. What I've learned now in my 30s is that it's really important to have an identity outside of my business. It's important to have different hobbies, different things you like to do, whether it's paddle tennis, running, going and hiking, being in nature. Having hobbies outside of the business is important because when you're able to detach yourself from things, you can just see the business a lot more clearly. Number 17, stop trying to be original, start being repeatable. Most people waste years chasing originality. The masters focus on repeatability. In my second business, Herb, at one point, we were constantly trying to be original and curate new custom things for every single person that we worked with. It got exhausting. All this customization just led to chaos. I eventually made 3 rules for any product that we started. It had to be repeatable, it had to be scalable, and we had to be able to deliver it on time at a high quality. Every business is repetitive at its core. You think of Apple, a $4 trillion company. At the end of the day, they're on iPhone number 17. It just shows that by just focusing on one core thing and doing it right, you can create something magical. Number 18, consistency beats intensity. Intensity gets you started. Consistency is what compounds. When I think about building anything amazing, it comes down to building something over the long term. When you think about building something not just for 5 years or 10 years, but for like 20, 30 years, being able to have a consistent system for what you need to do is everything. Because without it, you're going to burn out and you're going to give up and will stop the compounding. Number 19, perfectionism is just procrastination in disguise. One of the sayings that I love most is done is better than perfect. I think oftentimes as founders, we can wait for the perfect moment, the perfect piece of content, the perfect product, but oftentimes perfect never comes around. I think a lot of people think you need to figure it out and then launch it. But the truth is oftentimes you launch it and then you figure it out. Now, when you think about business, I think that 97% of success is actually correction. The majority of the time we're off track. Things are not quite right. And it's your ability to then get things back on track that'll get that product right. You'll be able to build the right team by just getting things out there. When I thought of launching Founder Us at first, truthfully, the first version of the community we launched, was something that I was even kind of embarrassed by. But when I look back, I'm really glad that I just launched it, because what I was able to then do is get feedback from people, learn, what do founders really need? What are the systems that are missing? What are the areas that I can go and make it stronger? And from all of that feedback, I was incredibly motivated to then build the community into what it is today. Number 20, if you don't own attention, you don't own a business. In today's world, attention isn't optional, it's everything. There's this quote that I love, which is that first-time founders focus on product, second-time founders focus on distribution. You can have an amazing product, but if it never sees the light of day, it's all for nothing. On the other side, I've seen hundreds of founders with a mediocre product, but massive amounts of attention and audience around them actually be incredibly successful. Because all that attention doesn't just drive your first customers, but it also gives you an enormous amount of feedback on what the market actually wants. And so the future belongs to founders that are commanding attention. And the best way to do this is to go and build your own personal brand and your audience around you. Which leads me to number 21. Distribution is more important than product. When I think about, my own business and the portfolio of online businesses I've built, what I spend a lot of my time on is really mastering the distribution around the different communities and products. When I go and think about YouTube as an example, this platform drives 4x more leads than the next platforms combined. Going and focusing on things like the thumbnails, the titles, the scripts, the hooks, the colors, everything, is incredibly valuable and is an insane amount of leverage on my time. From one YouTube video like this, I may go and generate 50,000 views. You can imagine 50,000 people. That's like a massive stadium of folks, which just shows you how powerful distribution can be if you go and you utilize it correctly. A great product with no distribution dies. A mediocre product with great distribution thrives. Number 22, relationships are assets. Most people treat relationships like feelings. Smart founders treat relationships like assets. When I was 23, my first business was raided by the government. This was by far the most shocking thing that had ever happened to me to that point. But when I took a step back and realized that the world was against me, I figured I would go and actually use the people that I had met over the previous 2 years building that business to go and help potentially save the day. Sure enough, over the next 3 days, I emailed over 3,000 people I had met, and within 1 week, the story was trending on Twitter in Canada. Against all odds, we were back in business the next week and had the only exemption of its kind in Canada, and that business would go on to exit for a life-changing sum. It was this experience that really taught me that relationships are assets. These days, every single month, I go and I reflect on, what is my personal board of advisors? Who are the people around me in given parts of my life and business that can help support me and help me get to the next level? I think about areas of business like marketing, sales, growth, content, people, strategy, and I have the right people in place to go and advise me. People like my executive coach, Ryan Begelman, who exited his last business for $60 million bootstrapped and is now helping me go and scale my businesses to that same level or, even further. It's inevitably people and getting, secrets from other mentors and advisors around you that is ultimately one of the biggest shortcuts in entrepreneurship. You can go and learn from other people's mistakes versus having to go and make those mistakes yourself. Number 23, outgrowing people is part of the process. Not everyone can come with you to the next level, and that's okay. I was traveling Norway with a good friend named Jan just a couple months ago, and he was talking to me about how certain people in his circles were kind of holding him back. And oftentimes, as founders, I see this all the time, right? You have a circle of people that, may have gotten you from where you were 10 years ago to where you are now. But when you go and you reflect on the people around you, maybe you've outgrown them, or even worse, maybe some of these people are holding you back. It's important that we put our own dreams first. The reality is that the same circle you had in your 20s may actually be holding you back in your 30s and 40s. And so it's about going and betting on your dreams, making the tough decision to probably cut some people off and double down on friends that really believe in you and that, fill up your cup, fill up your soul, and are helping propel you forward to the person you're trying to become. Number 24, your ego is the tax on every decision. The more you let your ego drive decisions, the more expensive those decisions get. At 26 years old, I received a life-changing offer, $50 million for my business. This was a sum that legitimately would change the entire trajectory of my life. At the time, I remember seeing, different images of folks like Zuckerberg or Spiegel that turned down life-changing billion-dollar offers to bet big on their thing. And instead of really doing a bit of soul searching as to, what I needed in my life and what would fill up my cup, I just kind of let my ego take over. Sure enough, I said no to these offers. Looking back, it was probably the stupidest decision I ever could have made. Oftentimes I'll think back to that with just a little bit of regret. What was I thinking? Why did I do that? And when I look at it, I had let my ego take over. I was just, thinking that I could accomplish the world. 50 million, what's that? Why not 500 million, 5 billion? When the reality of the businesses and the industry I was in were a lot different. I want to make sure that for you, right, don't let your ego blind you. Inevitably, stay rational, stay clear, and try to keep your ego in check, unlike I did at 26. Number 25, you don't need more time, you need better seasons. Everyone says they need more time, but the truth is you just need clear seasons. It's amazing what you can accomplish in life if you just set a deadline on things. This is what Parkinson's law is all about. The work that you put into something is just going to fill up the amount of time you allot for it. When I was 22, my back was up against the wall and I needed to raise capital for one of my companies. I gave myself 90 days and basically said, by the end of these 90 days, I am going to raise over $4 million. Sure enough, emailed over 2,000 people, had over 400 conversations, got over 384 no's to get 14 yeses, and ended up closing that round from legendary investors like the CEO and CEO of Shopify, Joe Montana, the Hall of Fame quarterback, the board of Viacom, number 8, number 20 at Facebook, and the list goes on. All of this would not have been possible if I hadn't have just dedicated that season to just raising this capital. And so it's amazing what you can accomplish if you set a deadline on things and live in seasons versus giving yourself all the time in the world. There's a saying that I live by, which is that pressure makes diamonds. Feel free and be willing to go and put a deadline on things to go and help make the impossible possible. Number 26, don't chase passion, chase problems. Everyone says follow your passion, but the real wins come from solving massive problems. These days, when I think of starting any business, I like to focus on a problem that genuinely excites me. I built Founder OS because I was looking to solve 3 main problems. Number 1, people wanted to go and build amazing personal brands, but they didn't know how. Number 2, they wanted to create systemized organic content to scale their audience so they didn't have to rely on paid ads. And third, just like I had in my previous 2 businesses, more and more founders wanted to remove themselves from operations. And so it was these 3 problems that I sought out to solve with Founder OS. What's that problem or set of problems that really fire you up? How can you go and focus on, being the best in the world at solving those problems and building a business around that? You don't need to just focus on passions, right? Become great at solving a problem and you'll become passionate about it. Number 27, stop saying I should have started earlier and start saying I should just start right now. The best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Stop wasting time in regret. The reality is that we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And the only difference is what you choose to do with them. When you think about what you're building right now, what is your 10-year vision that is insanely exciting to you? What do you need to do over the next 3 years to ladder up to that 10-year vision? From there, what do you need to do over the next 1 year and then in the next 90 days? And then just get after it. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Don't worry about, 10 years ago I could have started this, or, am I too old now? All of that is just a load of shit getting in your way. The reality is that we can all just start where our feet are now, right? Start with what you've got. Start today and just start messy. Number 28, character is built through repetition, not decisions. You don't decide your character once, you decide it every day through repetition. Excellence is a daily habit. You want to be a prolific writer? Write every day. You want to be an amazing person on camera? Film every week. You want to be amazing at building teams? Focus on reading more, on hiring every day, and building an amazing culture around you. It's the repetition that's going to create excellence in your life. Excellence is a daily habit. For me as a founder, one of the things that jazzes me up the most is creating the greatest founder content in the world. This is a massive goal, and I think I still have a long way to go. I don't let this big goal paralyze me. The reality is that, it starts with just the daily actions, writing every day, filming every week, building an amazing team around me, putting in the reps, making each piece of content 10% better than the last, focusing on getting 1% better every single day. It's from these tiny daily wins that you're able to accomplish massive things over the long term. From repetition, you build the power of compounding, which is like the 8th wonder in the world. And so focus on those small things you can do repeatedly that allow you to ladder up to the big vision you have for yourself. You don't decide your character once, you build it every day through repetition. Number 29, age is not your enemy, experience is your advantage. Everyone fears getting older, but in entrepreneurship, experience is your greatest weapon. Experience is leverage that no one can steal. All those lessons that you've learned over the years, all those mistakes you've made, all those challenges, those are now, the amazing leverage that you have to go and, see around corners, to have more leadership and to be able to do things the right way and just build smarter. A lot of the things that, I do today, it's not just the systems, the media, the leverage that I have around me. It's just because I've put in 10,000 reps doing what I'm doing. I have experience. I have wisdom, and I'm able to kind of see 17 steps ahead in many of the things I'm working on because I've just, done this so many times. Number 30, retirement is a lie. You don't need to design a life you need to escape from. We're sold the dream of retiring at 60, but that's a lie. The real dream is building a life that you don't need to retire from. These days, I focus on everyday retirement, or EDR. I discovered this by completing my own ikigai. Your ikigai is really what your reason for being is. It's your calling in life, and it sits at the intersection of what you're good at, what you can be paid for, what the world needs, and what you love to do. For me, that's things like building an amazing community of founders. It's, building systems, building distribution, going and creating content, traveling, being in nature, backpacking. These are the things that really fire me up. Every day I've architected a life that allows me to do these things every day, every week. This is what it's all about, right? This is what you deserve in your 30s and 40s. I hope that you go and take the advice from this video and go and implement it because I can't wait to see what you create. I've also gone and linked my own Scale Yourself playbook, which is the same playbook I've used throughout my 30s to get to where I am today. You can go and download it via the link in the description. So in this video, I've shared a lot of advice, and my hope is that you just pick 3 main things that stood out and go and implement those today to go build your own leverage, your own assets, and your own attention. And so I hope you found this video useful. I can't wait to see what you create, and welcome to the Founder Freedom Movement.